Most people don't fail because they're lazy. They fail because they make change too complicated. They wait for the perfect plan, perfect budget, perfect workout routine, or the perfect time to start. And while they're waiting, nothing changes. I used to do the same thing. I thought progress had to look big to matter. But the truth is, most real progress comes from simple things done consistently, not perfectly, just consistently. Now, last video, I talked about feeling behind in life, like I was stuck in the same routine, working, paying bills, etc. But realizing you feel stuck is only the first part. The harder question is, what do you actually do next? Because motivation fades fast. That late night, I'm going to change my life feeling, we've all had it. You stay up till 1, 2 a.m. You see a couple videos and you're like, yeah, I'm going to start investing. I'm going to lose all that weight now. It eventually fades and disappears. What actually changes your life is having a system that's simple enough to stick to. And honestly, that's probably the biggest mindset shift I've had. Not chasing perfect anymore, just focusing on showing up. Now, this shift in my mindset all started after I graduated from college. I hit the goal I had been chasing for years. I graduated, got my job, and started my career. And then, nothing. Nobody really talks about that part. You spend so much time chasing one thing, and once you get there, you realize no one tells you what comes next. And if you don't replace that goal with something else, you start drifting. And I think that's where a lot of people get stuck. At least that's where I found myself. You get used to being told what the next step of your life is, but there's a point where you have to start leading yourself. And that's where things get harder, because now there's no structure. Now it's on you to decide what you want, what you're working toward, and how you're going to get there. And I feel that this realization may catch a lot of people off guard. Not because they don't want more, but because they don't know how to approach it. At least for me, I didn't need more goals. I needed a better way to actually follow through on them. So when I started thinking seriously about my future, I realized I needed real goals. Not vague ideas like, I want to do better. Actual things I could measure. Because if you can't define progress, it's really easy to convince yourself you're moving when you're really not. And for me, a big one was my health. I remember back in 2023, I made my New Year's resolution to finally lose weight. Now, it's a very generic New Year's resolution, same one most people make, but at the time, I was weighing in at right around 240 pounds, which was the heaviest I had ever been in my life. And it was depressing because I knew I had a long way to go. And I told myself so many times I would do it, only to make excuses and fail. But I ran into a YouTube video. I remember it was probably the first or second week in January that completely changed my mindset forever. And it was hard to even believe the answer was so easy. Now, the focus of that video was keeping things simple. Just try to get 10,000 steps, work out 3 times a week, and track your calories. That was it. And at the time, I couldn't believe it because I was always the one trying different diets like keto or doing crazy workouts, working out for 2, 3 hours, and then just burning out and giving up. I realized I never tried what I thought was the easy way. And to my surprise, once I started, the weight was coming off just by sticking to this ideology of keeping things simple. I remember watching the scale drop and I couldn't believe my eyes seeing my weight go from 230, 220, 200 all the way down to 190. And honestly, it wasn't because I found some perfect program or suddenly became super disciplined overnight. It was consistency. I was truly working out 2 to 3 times a week, trying to get my steps in. I was usually aiming for around that 10,000 step mark. Sometimes I would hit the goal. Sometimes I wouldn't, or I would just get close. And I was just paying more attention to what I was eating. Yeah, sometimes I ate bad. There would be different occasions or celebrations like birthdays, and sometimes I skipped workouts. But I stopped letting one bad day turn into a bad month. That was the real difference. After I proved to myself this system actually works, I tried applying it financially as well. And if we're being honest, at one point I had over $20,000 in credit card debt. And that number can feel overwhelming. It makes people want to ignore it because I know that's what I did. But ignoring it doesn't make it any smaller. So just like I did with my weight and my health, I started keeping it simple. I was actually writing things down or creating an Excel sheet to track where my money was going and paying extra where I could, making intentional decisions instead of emotional ones. And over the last year, I brought that debt down to a little over $7,000 now. Yeah, I know there's still work to do on that, but I plan on clearing up the rest of that credit card debt in the next couple of months. But I'm just so happy that there's been real progress. And I think that's the biggest lesson I've learned. You don't need the perfect workout plan, you don't need the perfect budget, and you don't need the perfect time to start. You just need to start. And that's the hardest part, because keeping things simple usually means the results take longer. There's no crazy shortcut, no overnight transformation. Losing weight takes time because the skill drops slowly. Paying off debt takes time. The difference between $20,000 and $19,500 doesn't seem like much, and building discipline takes time. And that's exactly why most people quit. Because slow progress feels like failure, even when it's actually the process working. But real change is usually boring. It's simple decisions or small decisions repeated over and over again. And eventually, those small things become big things. Because showing up consistently beats waiting for perfection every single time. And that applies to fitness, money, relationships, or even starting this YouTube channel. Most people stay stuck because they spend too much time trying to plan the perfect move instead of just making the first one. And honestly, all this taught me something important. Motivation is overrated. There were so many times in the past where I would lose weight or start making progress and then fall right back into old habits. And every time I thought the problem was me, that I just wasn't disciplined enough or I needed more motivation. But looking back now, that wasn't the issue. The issue was my system. It wasn't sustainable. I was trying to do too much, too fast, so of course, I would burn out. Most people wait until they feel motivated to change their life. But honestly, most days you just won't feel that motivation because motivation comes and goes. It's unreliable. Systems are what matter because systems are what carry you on the days you don't feel like doing anything. They remove the guesswork, they give you structure, even when you're tired, you're busy, or when you just don't feel like it. And the crazy part is, simple systems are usually the hardest ones to stick to. Not because they're complicated, but because they're boring. Budgeting isn't exciting. Tracking your food isn't exciting. And going for a walk instead of staying on the couch definitely isn't exciting. But those boring things are usually the ones that actually change your life. So what does keeping it simple actually look like? Because it's easy to say, but harder to apply. And for me, it really comes down to a few things. First, pick a small number of things that actually matter. Not 10 different goals, but just a few. So for example, if you're trying to get in shape, maybe it's just walk more, lift a couple times a week, or be a little more aware of what you're eating. That's it. And if you're trying to fix your finances, maybe it's tracking your spending, paying a little extra toward your debt, or just stop ignoring the numbers. Simple. Not easy, but simple. Second, make it realistic. A lot of people set goals they can't sustain. Working out 6 days a week sounds great until life gets busy. Then you fall off and feel like you failed. And that's why I stuck with 2 to 3 days a week of working out, because I knew I could actually keep doing it. And third, don't restart every time you mess up. Now this was huge for me because for the longest time, every time I slipped up, I treated it like I failed. Miss a workout? I'll start again next week. Eat bad one day? Alright, diet's ruined. I'll reset on Monday. Spend a little too much? I'll fix it next month. And what ends up happening is you're constantly restarting, but never actually building anything. You stay stuck in this cycle of starting over and over again. And I didn't realize it at the time, but that mindset was killing my progress. The reality is, missing one workout doesn't matter. Eating bad one day doesn't matter. And spending a little more one week doesn't matter. What matters is what you do next. Because progress isn't about being perfect, it's about not quitting. And I think if more people approach their goals like that, they'd actually stick with them. And I think this is the part a lot of people misunderstand. Because progress is never a straight line. You're going to have good days and bad days. Weeks where you're locked in and weeks where you fall off a bit. And that's completely normal. That's part of it. What actually matters isn't being perfect every day. It's the overall direction. Are you trending in the right direction over time? Because if you zoom out, that's what real progress looks like. It's not a straight line going up, but something more like this up and down pattern, slowly moving in the direction that you want. And as long as that trend is moving forward, you're doing it right. And I think that's where I'm at right now. I know I don't have everything figured out, but I do know that I have direction. And honestly, I think that matters more than anything. Because once you stop chasing perfect and just focus on showing up, things do start to change. And yeah, the progress is slow, but the changes have given me proof that this is working. I don't feel stuck anymore. And I feel like I'm actually building something. If any of this resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. But that's all from me for now. Peace out.